What color are the walls? Written by Corpse Child. $10,000 to anyone who can correctly tell us what color the walls are. That's what the sign said. The white sign with big black letters. See, I can still tell you what color that is. I could tell you that, as well as the color of the building the sign was plastered over. A very dingy gray that was about as depressing as the cloudy sky was when I saw it that day. I can still remember how gray everything around me was. Like, if all the color was engulfed by the gray, depressing hue of the overcast. I truly don't know anymore. For God's sakes, I don't even know if I'm even in the real world anymore. Or if I'm still somehow in the damn room. It's only been a few hours now since I participated in the experiment. It was a week ago when I first saw the sign. I was walking home from another day, essentially wasted, behind my desk at the office, typing out budget plan after budget plan, just to make sure that glorified chimp in a three-piece tux would finally quit cracking his bullwhip over me about the numbers not being satisfactory, or not enough profit being ground out from this, or some happy horse shit like that. Mr. Ivan the Ape, or Monkey Ivan. That was what a few bold and rather hyper pissed off co-workers called him behind his back. It wasn't the color of his skin, his ghoulishly pale albino skin, that earned him this nickname, funny enough. No, it was the way in which the bastard couldn't seem to know how to use anything newer than Windows XP, much less run the company of an aspiring tech brand. Yet he'd still beat his chest in a huff if every little detail wasn't to his liking. Just imagine an albino Donkey Kong in a suit, and you'd have just about an accurate enough picture of Mr. Ivan. Anyway, I say this to say that my day was already circling the drain, as usual, and the way things were going, I didn't figure it would be long before he or corporate one found some way to cut me loose. That's, of course, when I found the sign. The big white sign with the bold black letters. At first, I was confused as all hell. 10 grand just to guess the color of the walls? My mind going through every possibility of there being some kind of a catch, as well as what guessing the color of the rooms even meant. Was it some sort of game where the rooms would be covered by curtains and you'd have to guess which one would be which color? None of it made sense, but I guess an easy 10,000 in my situation must have been too good a deal to pass up, and I went inside. Like I said earlier, the building was depressing, colorless on the outside. The inside, on the other hand, was the polar opposite. For the first 30 feet or so, the walls of the narrow corridor were like one of those blended color spectrums you'd see on paint programs. As they went on, I saw them twist into different patterns, similar to a kaleidoscope. I guess the first weird thing I noticed, or at least the first overtly strange thing, was the way in which the colors on the wall sort of morphed into the new designs. What I mean by this is that for so long the walls were one specific way and would very subtly sort of mold in a way you probably wouldn't notice at first. By the time your brain does catch on that, hey, something's different here, you're now wondering if the walls weren't like that the entire time. I know that's how it was for me anyways. It must have shown too, because the next thing I knew, I was snapped from a daze by a man wearing a purple button-up and khaki slacks. Strange, isn't it? The effect of colors? He sounded excited when he asked this, like he'd been practicing for some big sales pitch based on this. Sure, if you say so, I replied with a nervous chuckle. He stifled a giggle of his own as he watched me steal about 2 more glances at the walls. I heard him sigh in an almost condescending manner and put his arm on my shoulder, making it look like we were 2 art buffs gawking at Renaissance paintings in a studio. Yes, sir, you'd be surprised just how much color has an effect on our lives. More specifically, on our minds. Hell, without color, well, I'd say we'd all go stark raving nuts. He ended his little pitch with an exciting chuckle. But then again, he continued, what if color itself could make you go nuts, huh? I mean, think about it. Color gives dimension to the world. Color is what makes everything around us recognizable. You know, without it, nothing would have any features or definition to it. Everything would all be unrecognizable or inconceivable without color. I just nodded, looking like a bobblehead while he railed on about the evolution of colors and their effects on the mind through history and crap like that. Partly because of the utterly bizarre nature of the walls still holding my attention, as well as the guy's rambling sounding like something a college professor would spout at a semester. I paid little to no attention to what the hell he was saying. Yeah, Picasso, we get it. Color is the secret of life, or whatever. I joked, but looking back now, I might have been more prepared for the shit I'm knee-deep in now if I'd paid better attention. Finally, I was snapped from another daze when I felt him give me a clap on the back saying, yes sir, color has shaped our world. But now, back to my earlier question, what if there were no color? What would you see? What would you do in the absence of color? I shrugged. I don't know. His hyper-enthusiastic grin widened almost painfully, and his big brown eyes widened, fully exposing the red, small veins around them. Well, how would you, sir, like to find out? I just stood there, frozen, and not really sure what I was supposed to say. Being completely honest here, I was so utterly mind-fucked with everything in that moment that, despite wanting nothing more than to haul ass out of this little bizarro funhouse, I just couldn't seem to move or speak or even think straight for that matter. Fortunately, I guess, his question didn't seem to require an answer, because he immediately launched into his pitch about this experiment they're doing to test the mind's stability in the absence of color. Our hypothesis, he stated, is that in an environment devoid of colors, shapes, or anything, you won't be able to tell what's real anymore. Hence our pitch. 10 large to the first person to prove this hypothesis false. I looked stupidly at him. So basically it's sensory deprivation? I suppose you could look at it that way. Pretty mild way of saying it, in my opinion, but to each their own. Well, how exactly am I supposed to look at it? He just continued grinning, looking almost maniacal now. As a test, sir. The ultimate test of both your senses as well as your mind. To see just how far it can be stretched with literally no stimuli at all. And then he winked and asked, what do you say? With almost no thought, I scoffed and told the guy to blow it straight out his ass before striding towards the door I came from. I was about 4 feet from the door when he caught up with me, stopping me. Wait, he said, thrusting his hands to my chest. I saw it was a little silver business card reading, in bright blue letters. Brainstorm, LLC, where only the mind grants you power. Just consider it. I stuffed the card in my pocket and pushed my way past him and out of the door. I walked the rest of the way to my apartment, albeit with a more agitated and nervous stride. My mind was swimming all night with the whole thing, robbing me almost completely of sleep, and continuing still into the next morning. Because of this, I was barely functional at work. What was worse was that it was the due date for Q3 sales reviews, which in turn earned me a grade A ass chewing by old Monkey Ivan. In the end, I was told to go home early that day, and told not to come back for another 5 days. Unpaid leave. Great. Fan-frickin-tastic. Now, I'm out half my next paycheck, still needing another 35 hours from my salary. Plus, I was gonna try and gun for some overtime. Oh fucking well. So there I was, sitting in my apartment, wishing I could down a few shots and lose myself to blissful inebriation. Just my luck, I had no more jack, and, being stiffed on my next paycheck, I figured it'd be my best move to try and hold tight to what I had, despite how much I needed some kind of relief. Oddly though, much of my thought was still trapped in the whole colors situation. I can't explain it, but I found myself actually thinking more and more about what the guy was going on about. How color is what gives definition to everything around us. How color being the way in which we can perceive the world around us. Don't get me wrong, the guy was a complete nutjob, straight out of the wacky shack. But still, something about the ways he was saying it at the time made me legitimately wonder, what would it be like to be in a room with nothing at all, no colors? I'd heard before about sensory deprivation and how it causes people to panic. But what exactly do they see? Would it be real? How much so? I also found myself wondering exactly what aspect it was that triggers the senses of paranoia in such instances. Of course, this would ultimately get thrown in with the overarching issue of I need money and quick. The next thing I knew, I was uncrumpling the card from my pocket and calling the number listed under the blue letters. I was scheduled for screening the following morning, which was basically just me filling out paperwork and waivers so I couldn't run to the law if shit went south during the experiment. They also debriefed me as to what the experiment was and what I would be doing. Essentially, they rehashed what the guy in the hallway the previous day described it being. A test to see whether or not long-term deprivation of color, as they frequently termed it, would cause me to lose perception of what was real. They told me that my part in this was simply to stay in a certain room for about 3 days, and at the end they'd ask me what color the walls were. If I could answer it correctly at the time, then I would be taking home 10 large that day. I won't lie, I actually had to ask if these people were high as hell. $10,000 just to sit in a room for a few days and then tell them what the color of the fucking walls were? Tell me that doesn't sound far too good to be true. Sure enough though, they were dead serious about it. I asked if there'd be any sort of gas or injections they'd be using on me, or if there'd be any kind of sounds they'd play to stir up any kind of effects. Nope, nothing. In fact, they reiterated how the purpose was to see what would happen without any sort of stimuli. Just complete, silent solitude for 5 days, memorizing the color of the walls. Even though this sounded like the easiest and most money I'd ever make in my life, I was still a bit hesitant to actually go through with it. They made it all sound so easy. Too easy. In the end though, I told myself easy money was easy money, ludicrous or not. I was told to return the following Monday to begin the experiment and was expressly told not to bring any belongings with me. Just myself and the clothes on my back. For those next 2 days, waiting anxiously to claim my easy win, I was admittedly still anxious as to what was going to happen during that time. I'm sorry, but like I said, this was just too easy. There had to be some kind of catch here. Catch or not, though, first thing Monday morning, there I was, standing in that trippy-ass tie-dye hallway in the Brainstorm LLC building. "Well, hello there. Good to see you again," greeted the guy from before. "Are you ready to begin, sir?" "Sure, as ready as I'll ever be." "Keep calm," I told myself. "Just think of the 10 grand. "Excellent!" he exclaimed with a childlike hyper-enthusiasm. "Just follow me down here and we'll get started immediately." We walked down the hallway and I noticed that same effect from before, where the further down I went and the longer I looked, the more I thought I saw the colors actually moving and shifting into different shapes, like the colors in the spectrum were alive. When we turned down another hallway, the same thing happened, only this time, it was just black and yellow stripes going down. For whatever reason, maybe because of the actual colors themselves, who knows, but I actually thought I saw the forms of bumblebees buzzing around on the wall. For just a second, I almost could have sworn I actually heard them too. I was starting to get weirded out, and I didn't want to somehow fuck up my chance at the money, so I just shook my head and made sure to keep my eyes forward from that point on. "And here we are," he said, reaching out to open a giant, narrow metal door. Inside was an empty, blank white room. I had to squint my eyes going in from how bright it was. Or was it even lit? God, this is still confusing. "This is where the experiment will take place." I looked around the room. The walls were huge, at least 30 feet high, and about 40 or 50 feet wide, and seemed to be fresh drywall. So, exactly what am I supposed to do in here again, besides telling you the walls are white? His devious grin from before returned. "Anything you wish, or nothing at all. Your part is to just remain in this room for the next 5 days and tell us what color the walls are at the end, and the money's yours." I looked confused at him. "I just told you they're white. Do I get the money now?" "Oh, just wait. You may not have the same answer in 5 days, he said with an equally devious chuckle. "What about food, or if I need to use the bathroom, what do I do then?" But by the time I managed to get that out, he'd already, with a rather shit-eating grin, shut the huge metal door. "Great, thanks." So there I was, standing in the middle of an empty white room, all alone. So, what now? I was getting bored quickly, so I started feeling across the walls. Part of me wondered if I'd maybe find some sort of microphone or camera. I mean, they'd have to keep watch over me somehow, right? For research or something? But nope, nothing. Like I said, just fresh drywall. "Hey, can you hear me? Anyone?" Nothing. Okay, so I guess they can't hear me. I tried testing this by shrieking and howling at the top of my lungs like a deranged hyena. Still nothing. So they can't see me and they aren't listening. But how are they experimenting then? How, if they're not taking any sort of notes or anything like that? That's when I thought back to what they told me. All I had to do was stay in this room for 3 days and tell them that the walls are white. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it here. I took a deep breath. Just keep cool. Tell them the walls are still white and that money is as good as mine. Simple as that. I began fantasizing about the things I'd do with all that money. I mean, that's at least 3 paychecks right there, and all just for telling these eggheads that the walls were white. I began pretending that I was making it rain and showering in the money. Why not? I already found out no one else was watching. That's when the first weird thing happened, though. it was while I was imagining fanning myself with the cash that I thought I could actually feel it in my hands. It was soft and thin, just like paper money. I opened my eyes and of course saw nothing. It was a little odd, but I figured I was just caught up in the moment. You know how that goes. You get so excited about something and your mind and senses fixate on it, and all of a sudden you think it's actually there, but really it's not. Well, I thought that's what it was at first, but then for a brief instant, I thought I actually saw dollar bills raining down from the ceiling. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. Nothing. What the? Huh? I was confused. Where was the money? It was there, right in front of my face. Wasn't it? Cut it out. There wasn't shit there and you know it. I yawned. I was getting tired, which I figured was probably why I thought I saw money coming from the ceiling. That made sense. I mean, I'd been in the room for God only knows how many hours with literally nothing to do. Boredom was making me tired, which then made me think I saw money falling from above. Yeah, that's all it is. Boredom screwing with your head. Just shut your eyes for a while and everything will be fine. I laid down and, surprisingly, the floor was actually comfortable. It was almost as soft as the red satin sheets on my bed back home. In almost no time at all, I was falling asleep. Just before my eyes closed, however, I could have sworn I saw a giant wave of red all take up the floor. I was asleep before I could give it any further thought. I don't know how long I was out. It felt like I'd slept for the remainder of the experiment. When I woke up, though, you guessed it, white walls. I tried going back to sleep, but no luck. The floor didn't feel soft anymore. If anything, it felt like concrete almost. Out of instinct, I felt around the floor and the walls. They all now felt rough and coarse, like they were made from cement. Then, the more I looked at them, the more I noticed that they looked more grayish now, as opposed to their original blinding white. But how? I rubbed my eyes and looked again. White again. For about a solid 5 minutes, I just stood, staring at the wall. What's going on here? I did just see that, right? The wall was just gray, right? But how? How are the walls gray? The walls can't just change color like that. Or can they? I shook my head. Of course they can't. Stop being stupid. Walls can't change color. Though I told myself this, another thought sent my thoughts further into a frenzy. What if the color of the walls didn't actually change at all? What if they were actually gray the entire time? Maybe I was just imagining the whole time that they were white. Look, I get it. The illusions of the money falling from the ceiling and the soft satin-colored floor were one thing. I could write those off, no problem. Just my mind playing tricks on me because of the exhaustion and boredom. But this wasn't as easily passed off. I mean, think about it. White and gray aren't that different, right? Both are lighter colors, gray just being the combination of white and black, of light and dark. Could the walls actually be gray? I looked around again and saw that still the walls looked white. I felt them again, still feeling like common drywall. At least what I thought drywall at the moment was supposed to feel like. That was another thing. How in the hell was I feeling things that weren't there? Again, I know some of it could have just been in my head, but why or how was it that one moment the walls felt soft and smooth and the next they're completely different? Unless, of course, I was only imagining that it was drywall to begin with. I started rubbing my temples, feeling the onset of a headache. Fuck, man. This is ridiculous. You seriously gotta cut this shit out. The walls are white and you know it. I decided I'd just keep repeating this over and over, like a mantra. The walls are white. The walls are white. The walls are white. Eventually, I started to feel hungry. Hey, how are we doing lunch? I'm kinda getting hungry in here. I knew no one was gonna answer, having already established that they aren't listening, but I didn't know what else to do. I started imagining the taste of a thick, tender, juicy steak burger with a large side of fries. I thought of how the medium rare beef would sting my taste buds with a generous dousing of barbecue sauce. Suddenly there it was, in my hands, a soft, juicy steak burger, complete with a garlic toast bun that's been baked to a perfect golden brown. For a moment, I just stared at it. My head was spinning. Where the hell did this come from? How did it come from? The pain of hunger quickly overruled logic, though, and I took a huge bite out of the sandwich. Or at least, what I thought was the sandwich. Only after a sharp pain shot through me did I realize I'd just bitten into my hand, not a steak burger. My hand was in a lot of pain and was starting to bleed. Now I was starting to get pissed. What the fuck was going on? How was I seeing shit? Shit that I knew damn well wasn't there. And the walls, why were they changing colors? They're supposed to be white. There wasn't any food, there's no cash raining from the ceiling, there's no soft satin floor, and the fucking walls were white! Weren't they? I looked again, now seeing tiny black dots covering them. Now I knew something was up. Those definitely weren't there before. Though, this did make me rethink my conclusion that they weren't watching me. Could those dots be cameras? That would have made sense, except then how come I didn't notice them before? Even if they were hidden in the walls, I should have been able to feel them or something through the thin drywall. But then again, that's assuming that this was even actual drywall. When I reached out to touch one of the dots, and my eyes damn near shot from their sockets when I saw them begin to move like a swarm of ants as my fingers passed across the wall, some of them crawling up my arm. That wasn't possible, was it? Dots couldn't move. When I jerked away, though, the dots were still again, like they never moved. They didn't move, though, right? Dots can't move. Then again, though, there were no dots either. The walls were white, blank, no dots, no satin floor, no money falling. Just white. The walls are white. The walls are white. The walls are white. Eventually, this droned in my head so much that I was once again feeling sleepy. Like before, I was out before my head touched the floor, though this time the ground was still rough and coarse instead of soft like it was before. Also, I remember faintly seeing the tiny black dots moving again, swarming frantically around me, slowly trying to get closer and closer. I wasn't asleep long. I remember dreaming that the dots were crawling all over me like a mound of fire ants, burrowing into every orifice they could find. I felt them everywhere, inside and out. Eventually, I was blinded when they began scudding inside my eyeballs, and I started choking, suffocating, as more of them stuffed themselves down my throat. I woke up screaming, almost bolting straight to my feet, and started feeling myself all over. No ants, or black dots, or whatever the hell they were. I stood in the middle of the room, breathing heavily, trying to regain my bearings on the area around me, trying to make sure I really was only dreaming. Of course, it didn't help that now somehow the dots were gone, now replaced by micro-thin black lines. By now, I was beyond trying to rack my fucking head on whether or not the dots had actually been the lines the whole time. Hell, by then, I was almost convinced that that was how the room had always been. White, or was it gray, with thin black strands that looked like piano wire. But that still brings me back to the earlier question. Why hadn't I seen any of this before? How do I know this is actually how the room was from the beginning? I mean, I saw the fucking room. I remember the color of the fucking walls being white. Don't I? I closed my eyes and began straining to remember the way the room looked when I first went in. Large, blank, white, gray. Fuck! I couldn't even tell anymore if the walls were white or gray. Moreover, I couldn't really be sure they were actually blank. Maybe the dots, the strands, whatever, had been there from the get-go. Maybe it was like the walls in the hallway. How I thought the tie-dye colored walls were shifting but actually weren't. That could make sense. And maybe the reason I thought the dots were ants was because that was the color I associated with ants. Basically, I pictured ants when I saw the tiny dots, and so my mind made me think the dots were moving. Just like how I thought the floor was soft because I was imagining I was in my bed. And because I was hungry, I imagined my tan-skinned hands to be the toasted bun of a sandwich. Color is what makes everything around us recognizable, you know. I was finally beginning to understand it. I finally started understanding why the challenge was to tell them what color the walls were. But with this, I realized I wasn't really sure what color they were to begin with. Were they white? Were they blank? Was all that the illusion the entire time? Do they even know what color the fucking walls are? My breathing started getting heavier and heavier, feeling like I was being strangled. The next thing I knew, I saw two strands coiled around my neck, tightening like a noose. I began clawing at my throat to pry them loose, to no purpose. Soon my vision began to blur, and I was only able to let out a strained wheezing. I closed my eyes and started repeating over and over in my head, "They're just lines! They're just lines! They're just lines!" Finally, I felt able to breathe again. Opening my eyes, the room was like it was before. White, maybe gray with long, thin strands, maybe dots. That's when I began laughing. It wasn't a funny shit laugh, or even a laugh of relief. It was the laugh of one whose mind has been bent and twisted every which way until it's finally been snapped like a twig. I couldn't take it anymore. This room, the experiment, the goddamn colors, all of it. I just couldn't take this mindfuck anymore. I didn't even care about the money anymore. I just had to get the fuck out of there. Without thinking, I bolted up to where the door was, or thought it was. When I began trying to pry at the cracks of the doorway, I realized that my fingers weren't grabbing anything, simply just brushing the thin black strands going down the wall. Where's the door? It was right here, wasn't it? Where's the fucking door? Then again, I began thinking, had that been where the door was? Was there even a door at all? That was when I truly lost it. I began driving my head into the wall as I screamed, "Let me out of here! Let me out!" Eventually, I finally blacked out again from the constant trauma. When I woke up again, God only knows how much later, I was in what looked to be a hospital room. It was dark, and I didn't see anyone, so I guessed it was nighttime. my head was still fuzzy, and everything was still blurred. Feeling around, I found that I was laying in a soft bed with thin white linen covering my legs. In my pocket, I pulled out the crumpled up Brainstorm LLC card. On the back were the words, "Thank you for participating in the latest Brainstorm LLC experiment." Everything was quiet. There wasn't even the beeping of an EKG machine. How did I get here? Slowly, everything started coming back to me. The lines, dots, the money falling from the ceiling, the soft floor, the walls. That's when panic struck me like a knife. The walls, the experiment. What happened? Is it over? Did I pass or fail it? How in the hell did I even get out? I am out of the room, right? Jesus Christ. I don't know anymore. Am I out of the room? Am I actually in the hospital right now? Or am I just seeing what my mind is telling me? Or what I guess the colors are telling me is a hospital room. I don't even know if this phone I'm typing this on is real. I mean, it's a white iPhone, or at least that's what I'm seeing it as. But is it actually a phone? How do I know it's not just something from the room again? I need help. Please, if this is real, if I'm actually in the real world again, somebody tell me. Somebody give me a sign. Anything to prove I'm not in the room anymore. God, I don't know what colors the walls are. I don't know what color anything really is anymore.